Alright, we're live Friday night, 5/24/2024. I have a few things to discuss tonight. We'll pick up from last night. We would have been about 30 minutes earlier, but Blog Talk Radio is down. Our new phone system is down. I'm sure it's only a coincidence. And I'm sure it's only a coincidence that on every single one of my Twitter accounts, the video streaming has been disabled. They removed the button. Like they Mandela affected my Twitter apps. They just removed these buttons. Doesn't make any sense. I've been noticing these types of things lately. So we'll just chalk it off to gremlins for the evening. If you want to call in, you can still use the old number, not the new number. All right, let's see who's here. Aries 1, let's go. P Trippa, Osher 3 up, 3 down, X322, Elephant Tusks consumed by AI. Linda Curtis, Violet Penguin, Jay Diggs says, I have 40 minutes left in Civil War. Stopped it when I got the first email. Considering the length of the end credits, I probably could have finished it. I'm not going to give you any kind of spoilers. I mean, the movie's pretty ham-fisted anyway. That and Leave the World Behind. They don't leave very much for speculation. You don't have to be a film critic. You know, you don't have to really do subtext analysis all the time to see how blatant the messaging is. I thought it was even more obvious with A Man in Full. If you haven't seen that, it was a Netflix show based off of a Tom Wolfe book, which they repurposed to sate their Trump derangement syndrome afflicted audience's taste for Trump bashing. And every movie now ends with somebody who looks like Trump, getting it at the end, which is, again, predictive programming. We know what's going to happen. We give spoiler alerts here for what's going to happen on the world stage. And when I look at these movies, to me, it's just, these aren't just movies. This is propaganda. And it's so extensive, it's so pervasive. The propaganda is deeper than people think. It's not like it's just these obvious, big events, PR stunts, perception management stunts, but it's really subtle most of the time. Just subtle world view reinforcement, normalizing certain things that are actually extraordinary. All right, joined here by Jennifer Reeves. Ted Stryker says, good to be here for more enlightenment. Yes, this is something of a, you could look at it as a pushback against what could be viewed as endarkenment. The hoodwink of the day is the digital hoodwink, and it does, in fact, have the effect of entirely filtering people's reality into this constrained view, a closed system full of hyperstitions. By the way, I want to debate. I want to arrange some debates. If somebody wants to debate me about chemtrails, let's do it. ISS, let's do it. But I have a couple of rules. I don't have any rules for the chemtrail thing. That there's too many takes on it for me to be putting any guidelines. I think we just need to go through the claims and parse them as they are made. But when it comes to the ISS, if you want to debate me on this, you can, under one condition. You have to bring evidence. You have to supply your own. You cannot supply NASA's. You cannot supply anyone else's from YouTube. If you want to debate on the side that the ISS is a orbiting space station and not a movie set, you're going to have to go outside with your iPhone. And it's easy. Just go outside. Use the app. It just takes 5 seconds. Everybody can do it. That's what the believers say. The believers in the ISS are always like, why don't you go outside and touch grass? You could just go outside and see it. Well, if it's that easy, then you can rightfully assume this burden of proof. And if that's too high of a standard of evidence, if you can't go out and record it, then you can't debate me as though it exists. So we'll see what happens there. Again, if you want to debate me on the ISS or chemtrails, just comment me below. Elephant Tusk says, someday they will erect a Tim Osmond statue and put it next to the George Floyd one. Oh, by the way, tomorrow's George Floyd Day. I was trying to start tonight at 8:46 in honor of George Floyd, but I got caught up with the gremlins. But yes, tomorrow is the anniversary. This is Memorial Day weekend, and I believe this is the weekend that precedes the summer of riots. And I think they just arrested some MAGA maniac who's ready for the Civil War. I guess he already watched the movie that Jay Diggs is still watching, and he went out and he got some bombs, and they arrested him. Probably a psyop. I just saw that in the news today. Let's see if it's anybody we recognize. Ready for civil war. Illinois man arrested with bombs posted right-wing content. Now, how many times have I said that the Civil War is going to be kicked off by a domestic violent extremist Timothy McVeigh like? They found pipe bombs, and he posted conspiracy theories about the 2020 election, and there are always these unsightly neckbeards. Like, this is a deliberate mischaracterization. They want to make it look like, okay, like this to me looks like ISIS. The same type of caricature they give you, some scary guy with a neckbeard terrorist. But this is vanilla ISIS. QAnon has replaced the Quran as the radicalizing agent here. Because we're talking about radicals, radicalized by extremist ideology versus. So the Quran, which motivated ISIS and radical Islam, has been supplanted by QAnon, which motivates the domestic equivalent of ISIS, white Al Qaeda, vanilla ISIS. We've talked about this for a long time. This story is being published in partnership with the American Doom newsletter that focuses on right-wing extremism. Okay, anyway, this is in Illinois. Now, Illinois stands out for a few reasons, but we'll get back to that. But ready for civil war. I Can't Breathe Today says consumed by AI. Well, look, I can't breathe. Let's get into that really quick. That's a meme. And it's an anagram for a better China. And if you look at BLM as the vanguard of radical Marxism in America, and then you look at the goals of China, and of course how the West and capitalism are blamed for not only systemic racism and oppression, which is the reason why George Floyd couldn't breathe, but also for destroying Gaia and the atmosphere. So Gaia can't breathe. We can't breathe. The poor can't breathe because the rich have polluted the atmosphere with all their fossil fuels. You see how this works? So I Can't Breathe is actually sort of a communist slogan. And by the way, I Can't Breathe was used by, it was actually part of a movement that started after Eric Garner. So it didn't start with Floyd, but it was a slogan, and that was the purpose of it. Kobe Bryant was part of that I Can't Breathe campaign at one point. And of course, we can get into the nuance there, but he's one of these death fakers whose death by helicopter seemed to precede the big events of 2020. And many people were comparing it to the death of the president of Iran. And will that helicopter crash also begin something? Is it a starting point? Okay, let's continue here. Ted Stryker says the neckbeard doesn't sound or look right. No, they make them look like cave-dwelling terrorists. They make them look like something out of the 15th century or 7th century rather, at war with the West. And it is an equivalent. The great Satan is now the deep state. What's the difference? Okay, let's continue here. Let's go through my notes for the day. We had a lot of calls last night. Again, phones are open. You just have to call the number on the screen. Okay, so those of you who are into the flat earth topic, or you question the ISS, you're familiar with various influencers who parrot these ideas. And one of them I've referenced before is Stu Peters, who one minute is saying, hey, check out this guy. And he shares my video where I'm calling the ISS a movie set. And then his next tweet, he's walking through the woods carrying a noose. And he's like, it's time for accountability. Well, anyway, now he has gone out and published a documentary about how the Capitol was built by giants. So he's gone full-blown mud flood Tartarianism. Stu Peters promotes claim that the Capitol is built by a race of giants. Now, I'm only bringing this up because it just seems like there's this operation in progress to contaminate any kind of conspiracy theory. So, like, there's no safe conspiracy theory that's simply for conspiratainment. No, it's all just 1 degree separated from Nazis who want to burn books and lynch people. 1 degree separated. And the Nazis who want to burn people or books or whatever, they are the most vocal and visible representation of these various ideas. So now if you're into mud flood theory, guess what? Now you're a Nazi. Stu Peters promotes claim that the Capitol was built by giants. And notice how they frame this. White nationalist Stu Peters unveils a trailer for his latest propaganda film, Old World Order, promoting the Tartarian Empire conspiracy theory, which posits that buildings such as the Chicago Federal Building and the U.S. Capitol were built by a race of technologically advanced giants who were wiped out in a great mud flood. All the evidence for this was covered up by the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, obviously. Goes on to say Stu Peters interviewed the film's director Sean Hibbeler, a flat earther and 9/11 truther who frequently reposts Peters' bigoted content on X. See, I repost Peters when it's something I agree with, and now I'm not so inclined to because it's guilt by association. I also want to point out Sean Hibbeler was on InfoWars, and they kept jokingly calling him Hail Hibbeler, but his video company is Black Sun, and it's a Nazi symbol, so they kind of branded it that way anyway, which is just, it's ill-advised if you're trying to distance yourself from that, but no, that doesn't seem to be the case. It looks to me like a deliberate smear campaign. Hibbeler claimed the film serves as an introduction to the PSYOP, and that Tartaria is just one of many empires hidden from us. If you look at these older buildings in your community, it'll say founded in 1898, but when you go on their website, you'll see it was constructed in a year. The timelines don't make any sense. Anyway, it goes on into wireless energy, energy from the ether, and giants. Let me play a short clip.
Old World Order's kind of a 101 introduction to this PSYOP, really, because a lot of people don't know about it. They've heard about it, or they'll hear the word Tartaria.
Yes.
That's just one piece of it. That's one empire. That's where Russia was. Okay, I mean that's where Russia is now. That's where Tartaria was. It's one of many empires that were hidden from us. The reason, like you said earlier, that they wanted to hide it is because, well, number one, they don't want people to know that we didn't build these buildings. We found these buildings. If you look at some of these older buildings in your community, will actually say, they actually admit some stuff, Stu.
Okay, all very interesting. I remember a lot of the videos. They do get people interested in architecture, but I would chalk up most of their arguments to, one, the fallacy of arguing from incredulity, and then two, arguing from ignorance, meaning instead of talking to an architect or talking to a stoneworker and asking them how this particular sculpture was created, they'll say, I don't know how they did it, therefore magic. And that type of reasoning typifies the mud flood researcher. Now, I'm not saying I trust the official history, but it looks to me like this is something there to muddy the waters. No pun intended. And then Stu Peters being there, yeah, we know what his gig is. He's like, oh, you're a mud flooder. Let's go to a lynching party with Stu Peters. In fact, I think they canceled his lynching party. We'll get into that. Let's see. There's some comments here on it. Stu Peters is a self-proclaimed post-apocalyptic warlord. Again, this hope for doom is what typifies conspiracy theorists today. Someone else says, wow, he's taken the Graham Hancock ancient alien approach to the Capitol. Can't wait for the Netflix series. Someone else says, it's common for morons like him to believe in fundamentalist creationism Bible stories. Okay, well, anyway, there's obviously skepticism about it. This one's not even about pyramids or Atlantis. It's about the U.S. Capitol building, which isn't even that old. Someone else here says, the mud flood and Tartaria BS is staggeringly stupid, and Stu Peters has all the charm of a horsefly maggot. Someone else says, if he thinks the Capitol is so large it required giants to build it, who made the Pentagon? Supergiants? Alright, anyway. A lot of this strangeness that I cover out here on the fringe of the fringe, because we're on the cutting fringe out here, is finally making it up to the mainstream. Now, one of the accounts that I block because he gives me a headache, I get triggered. Like, I'll spend 12 hours a day not debating, but just trying to see if this person will reveal something about themselves, because I think this is some kind of a psyop. The JFK worshiping cult, who believe that JFK is related to Lincoln and Lincoln was related to Jesus, that whole thing, it's been picked up on by MSNBC. Let me go ahead and play a clip here. It's called "You Think You Know, but You Have No Idea."
Trump is related to the Kennedy family. Here's how. George Patton is the grandson of Abraham Lincoln. Benito Mussolini is George Patton's brother. Joseph Kennedy, who's the older brother of John F. Kennedy, who we thought died in World War II, actually didn't, but he went into hiding and had a son who happens to be General Michael Flynn, which makes Flynn first cousins to John F. Kennedy Jr. And where is Trump in this nutty family tree? Donald Trump is, get this, the biological son of General Patton, which makes Trump the first cousin of JFK Jr., which explains why Donald Trump actually accused Senator Ted Cruz's father of being friends with JFK's killer. He was avenging the death of his uncle.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Now, on this point, it has been admitted by the National Enquirer that the story about Cruz's father being there at the JFK assassination was all made up. So here's the story. Trump accuses Cruz's father of helping in the JFK assassination. So yeah, that story went out there in 2016, and there's pictures to prove it. Well, recently, this story has been brought back up. Ted Cruz's father and the JFK smear in the National Enquirer, what we know now. So what has recently emerged after nearly 8 years is that David Pecker, former publisher for the Enquirer, testified that they manufactured the story. They made it up. So here's Trump talking about fake news, and he hires the National Enquirer to manufacture stories to claim that Ted Cruz had both multiple mistresses and his father killed JFK or helped in the assassination of JFK. I mean, that's psychopathic to sociopathic to be able to just lie like that and then accuse the other side of being fake. Water walking. Jesus Us says some cities got a lot of underground tunnels under the streets. It seems pretty common even in smaller towns. They probably still use them for different things. Portal Complex says, who set up the World Fair so quickly and made them disappear? Well, here's the thing, and this is actually very common, and this is one of the things that typifies Trutherville, is asking a question. Sometimes people say, I'm just asking, or just asking questions. Well, is it a good faith question? Is it a question asked in full knowledge of the available facts, or is it deliberately obfuscating or ignoring the established facts, just throwing that out? Because when you're debating against the other side, you do have to know the other side. You can't just ignore it. And I see this issue with the chemtrail thing, where they can't explain the phenomenon of contrails well enough to debunk it, but they'll act like, I don't know what it is. It's a question. Well, no, it's not a question. So when we ask a question, how did they make this building? Maybe it's already known. You might even be able to find blueprints. So I think we have to be careful about accepting all these arguments that are essentially appeals to ignorance, which meaning only those who don't know will be convinced that it is a question. And so they're walking around with just armfuls of question marks. Like, oh, look at all these questions we got. Yeah, all these questions have answers. But you're being steered into some kind of mystification of the subject. And so that's kind of what I think is going on with the mud flood. So when it comes to who set up the World's Fairs, is it even a mystery, is my question. You're asserting there's a question, and I'm questioning your question. Jay Digg says, how do we know all the JFK stuff isn't entirely a psyop or bots? It was popular during lockdowns, but does anyone in real life believe that? That's why I've been needling these various accounts. I've been hitting them up just trying to figure out, well, if you really found the identity of God among us, and you know this miracle that's going to shake the world, where every human being is going to see this, and we're all going to have magic happen in our lives because of it, and you're going to stay anonymous on Twitter? I don't believe you. if you're really a prophet, you're going to come out and you're going to stand by your claims, or you're trying to dodge accountability. And if you're trying to dodge accountability, it means that you're likely lying or guessing, or you don't really believe it. So that's why when I'm getting into debates, like let's say we do get someone who's willing to debate me on the existence of the ISS, it has to be on video. I don't trust anons. I don't trust anonymous people with agendas. And if you're going to make some absurd claim, you need to have skin in the game. All right, Tim Osman says evidence of absence more so. Yeah, look, the main thing is this, is that a lot of people don't have the answers to these questions that are raised, and these questions are often planted questions in order to lead people down rabbit trails. So I don't always trust these questions. These are loaded questions, is my point. The loaded question being, it's not known, therefore there's a mystery. Salty says they're all bots even when they're human. Bot minds. Yeah, agreed. Tim Osman says, why is there no 24/7 live stream of the moon? Same thing. Well, that's a good question. It's something of a valid question. Should be kind of easy. Look, I'm looking at this though. If someone's going to debate something, they need to be able to stand by their claims and then back down appropriately if their claims are found to be on shaky ground. And that's the reason why I want to get into these various debates. And I did have a debate about the International Space Station with McToon, and he said, you just need to go outside and look. Just use the app and you can see it. And I said to him, that's all I need to do. Go outside and use the app and I can see it. Have you seen it? I asked. And he said, lengthy pause, jaw drops, sweats. He's like, no. I'm like, oh, you haven't seen the ISS, and you told me all I need to do is go outside and snap a picture of it, and you haven't done it, and you're here berating me as though I have the intellectual low ground. So the debate went nowhere. And I decided that I'm not going to debate somebody on the existence of the ISS if they don't have a video of it or a picture. If I believed in it, I would go outside and take a selfie with it. And I would be there smiling on camera, the space station flying over my head. I'd show you the app. And I'd be like, take that, flat earthers. But for all the glurfs out there who believe in it, there's not one who can take the initiative to record it with their iPhone. You rely on other people's solar transits, lunar transits, which both have one thing in common: zero eyewitnesses. So bring an eyewitness, no false witness will be accepted. Jay Digg says it was like 20 minutes of McToon dodging the question before he answered no. Yeah, he was just tap dancing, nervous, realized that he was caught, and I think he was considering lying. I think he was thinking, I should just lie and say that I saw it like everybody else does, because that's what people generally do is they lie. Believers are liars, for the most part, when they're defending their beliefs. And he was going to lie to me, but I think he realized if I lie, he's going to ask me when and where, latitude, longitude, show me the proof. Then he would be caught without the proof, and he'd have to lie about that as well. So I don't think he wanted to lie multiple times to me. So he just admitted the truth, which was embarrassing. I was embarrassed for him. Like, I'm still embarrassed for McToon. The fact that he doesn't have a selfie with the ISS is garbage. He shouldn't be debating it. In fact, I would take his debating license away from him. He's been calling the FAA to try to get Quincy the pilot's pilot license taken from him, just because Quincy doesn't believe NASA. All right, phones are open, numbers on the screen. Okay, yes, ringer is now on. I realized I had the ringer off. Someone was just calling about 2 minutes ago. Anyway, I just brought this up. The MSNBC has caught on to this insanity of these JFK bots. And to address the person's comment, I don't know a single person that worships John Kennedy or John Kennedy Jr. It's an internet phenomenon, and it exists primarily on Facebook and on X. And these channels are wildly disproportionate. I mean, we're talking 50,000 subscribers just because you believe that a 110-year-old dead president is coming back to save us. And I've been around delusional people. I've been around people in the throes of a psychosis, drug-induced, schizophrenic, psychotic delusion, and I've tried to converse. Actually, I have. I'm polite about it. I can actually have conversations with people who are, delusional and schizoid. Not a problem for me, but I recognize the flaws in their logic. And one of the things that typifies them is that they believe this stream of consciousness rambling, and everything they say is true. Nothing can contradict it. It's just a different reality. And it's the definition of mental illness, is what I'm saying. This worship of Kennedy and these bizarre beliefs, but there's no internal checks and balances. There's no debating it. There's no person to come out in front of it and say, we believe this. It's completely anonymous. It's very disturbing. It's weirder than Scientology. Portal says, I played in a band called the Woolcoats. Our keyboard player has filmed a UFO slicing through chemtrails. Interesting, got a twofer there. Now, UFOs and chemtrails are both things that are what I would consider to be hyperstitions. UFOs are on very shaky ground. I find it kind of interesting that people like Mick West can professionally debunk every UFO sighting, but he still believes in the ISS. I guarantee he doesn't have a video of it. So here's something else too. My disbelief is informed. I have an informed disbelief. I'm not just hand waving evidence away and saying I don't believe it. I have a reason for not believing in it. But your belief in it is low information belief. If you believe in the ISS and you don't have a video of it on your personal iPhone, you are a low information believer. So what weighs more? Low information belief or high information non-belief? Informed skepticism or conformist, go with the flow, believe whatever they're dumping into your brain? You see, so our position takes the intellectual high ground. If you're a believer in it, show me your evidence or you're a liar. Next topic, I listened to the first hour. I actually recommend it. John LeBon had a conversation with Brian Stavely, and they didn't get into the Mandela effect in the first hour. So you have to be a member to get the entire conversation. But the first hour was pretty good. I linked it at minds.com/Infinite Plane Society. And the first hour, they mostly stuck to fake media fakery, fake 9/11, fake planes, and the controlled opposition within the 9/11 truth movement. So they made a lot of sense. I didn't get to hear the rest of it. I'd be curious, and I'll probably try to follow up with that later. Okay, let's see here. Going through some comments. Aries1 says 70% of internet traffic is bots. I can believe that. 70% of the population could be NPC. Portal Complex said his channel is called the Vastin Experience. Okay. Well, yeah, post links. Look, I'm interested in people presenting their own evidence, and that's what I want. I want people to raise their standards. We're in the information age. We shouldn't have to rely on secondhand hearsay and hearsay. All right, let's see what we have here. I'm looking at the Conspiracy No Paul Reddit for John LeBon's, is this Conspiracy No Paul for his episode here. Chick-fil-A and the girl without braces in Moonraker. Says here, enough of the fluff. Is your reality changing in inexplicable ways? Food company names and logos, the color of robot legs, the position of land masses on maps. You name it, somebody out there thinks it changed. Are these people complete Fruit Loops, or is there more to the story? Recently, I chatted with Brian Stavely, one of the leading Mandela Effect content creators of the past half decade. It is abundant. I'd consider him to be the top ME guru, to be honest. It is abundantly clear that Brian is intelligent, articulate, thoughtful, and well-meaning. The question is, how did he become so convinced about what he now calls fluid reality? Now, let me go ahead and take credit for that. That was my meme, fluid reality. I said the Mandela affected are reality fluid. And now the world stage is essentially reality fluid. But that's kind of his position. Anyway, JLB goes on to say, we went through a range of examples of what Brian and his followers believe to be evidence of reality changing. Believe it or not, there is one case of a Pokemon name spelling which I myself remember differently. What do you think about the Mandela effect? Complete nonsense, or is there something more sinister at play? Okay, well, first of all, I would say this. The fact that someone misremembers something at all in no way connects to reality shifting. That's right off the bat. Like, oh, I remember the word spelled with two M's, like let's say dilemma, and the dictionary say something different. There's no way I'm wrong, because I'm never wrong. My memory is infallible. Therefore, everything else changed. The universe changed. You see how that works? It's a pretty big claim. But again, misremembrances happen. I think the Mandela effect is fascinating. The Mandela effect is real. It's as real as the ISS. These things exist, but they aren't what the believers believe that they are. If you have any comments on any of this, we can address it. We do have a documentary working on this thing. I think it's interesting how some people will stand on one or two that have the most plausible explanation, but we'll get to it. I think it's ultimately about context and retroactive interference and false memory implantation. Let's see what some of the comments are. M.W. Rawls says, I believe that most of the MEs are people misremembering, movie quotes being misspoken, logos actually changing, knockoff brands, and I believe that many MEs, like the original one of Nelson Mandela, are just misreporting. Okay? Now, about the Fruit Loops, because some will say Fruit Loops used to be spelled F-R-U-I-T and then it became F-R-O-O. No, it didn't. And I know this because I looked into it. It turns out you couldn't put the word fruit on Fruit Loops because it contains no fruit. It would be false advertising. So from the very beginning, it was always F-R-O-O. Portal Complex says ME is dead. The Mandela effect is dead, but the Tim Pool effect is real, and it's very much alive. Tim Pool used to have an E. I remember that. Now it doesn't. My memory could not possibly be wrong. Therefore, everybody else is wrong, and reality shifted. Flash Flucker says, Mandela effect is a very interesting concept of interpersonal phenomenon that is influenced by cultural exchange and cognitive bias. As more people catch on to derivatives in nomenclature, we tend to lose touch with the old, since it feels further from what we're comfortable with viewing. Studying these influences and how they relate to cognitive bias is a very interesting field. Yeah, cognitive bias plays a huge part in it, as does peer pressure, belonging to a group. But for the most part, gaslighting is the biggest part of it. I do believe that the Mandela effect is the byproduct of gaslighting, which is a form of psychological abuse. That's why I call it a psyop. So let me give you an example. What color do you remember the sky being? Do you remember it being violet or blue? You know, just something basic. Well, obviously you know it's blue. So the fact that I'm asking means I'm asking a question in bad faith. And if you can ask a question in bad faith and get someone to question their very perceptions, what they know to be true, put that into doubt, well, then you've effectively gaslit them, especially if you can get them to agree with something that they didn't actually perceive. And this is accomplished by drawing their attention to a specific phenomenon, a logo, a character, a slogan, a meme. And you tell them, oh, do you remember this meme? It used to be this way. Well, when you prompt them, they actually imagine it. And this imagined version of it now coexists in their mind with their actual recollection. This is called retroactive interference. And this explains a lot when it comes to faulty eyewitness testimony. So in other words, the Mandela affected are all faulty eyewitnesses, and they've been rendered so because of the way the questions were raised. Nobody came at this organically. You have to be inducted into it with a series of questions that gaslight you, one after another. Okay, let's see. Portal says basically they need a way to waste time. Distraction is a key. ME is dead and not worth discussing. I think it's 100% worth discussing because one, you can explain false memories, how gaslighting is used to coerce people into selecting from limited options without considering anything outside. So they present you with a false binary. Well, if reality is fluid, there should be 50 different versions of every logo. No, there's only one alternative. And then we can bring up the dynamics of belonging to a group that now sees itself as having experienced the miraculous. So it also shows how religions are formed around fake miracles. Infinite Plane Radio. Okay, Skype just basically demonstrated why I hate it. Annoying ringer, and it's rarely picking up calls when it's supposed to. So if you want to try calling back, feel free. No guarantees here with Skype. I'll try to get Blog Talk Radio, but something happened. Not sure. Their site's down. Okay, moving on here. I want to get into this briefly. I'm reading this book called In the Country of the Blind, about a secret society that has taken control of history. And we've been talking about this idea of newsbenders for some time. So there's a couple of things here. A couple of excerpts from the book. This book was published in 1987, so it's not even a new book, and yet it has a very advanced understanding of memes and how memes work, memetics, memetic engineering. These are all terms used in this book, but here's a couple of excerpts. And just as a background, the book is from the perspective of a reporter, a journalist who is able to put some pieces together when it comes to how history is being manipulated. And this makes her a threat, and she and all of her friends are being targeted for assassination by this secret society who are in fact using some supercomputer, and they're manipulating the mass mind in what they believe is a direction that will ultimately benefit everybody, even if it reduces everyone to, quote, techno peasants, whose lives are drowned out in meaningless memes. Upside Down Guy says, Country of the Blind doesn't have an audiobook. No, it doesn't, but I'll do a thorough review of it. So here's a couple excerpts. Now, in this one here, this is from within the room with the newsbenders, and they're talking about the problem here when the person I'm speaking of, the protagonist, publishes her findings. So it would be like if I was able to publish Autohoaxology 101 on, like, through a computer virus and get it published on every major social media platform for the major news agencies, but exposing how psyops work, maybe even some information behind the scenes, doxing crisis actors. That's kind of the type of action this character takes. They expose the big conspiracy and who's behind it. They name names. So they're at a meeting and he says, quote, the issue before us is how to best preserve the secret. This is the most serious breach of security since Quinn defected. The fact our enemies were able to penetrate our databases and release them to the world indicates a need for twofold action. First, how do we close the barn door? Second, how do we contain and redirect the flow of unwanted memes among the general populace? So they recognize certain memes got out there. The meme that we talk about all the time, the meme of auto-hoaxing, of skepticism, is something that is not contained within the world stage. The controlled opposition conspiracy theorists still talk in terms of false flags. They aren't all up to speed on the level of fakery. Those memes have been successfully contained. Interestingly, one of the conspirators behind the scenes who's controlling the flow of information happens to have the last name Weil, like Kelly Weil, who was the one who did the book Off the Edge about flat earth and conspiracy culture, and helped really set the narrative that YouTube was spreading memes that was turning people into flat earthers. So I thought it's kind of interesting that the names kind of lined up. The book's by someone named Michael Flynn, of all people, who is all about meme warfare. Now, here's another part that I find interesting. It has an explanation for all the conspiracy theories that blame Jews for everything. Quote, have you ever noticed how a story or rumor changes as it spreads from person to person? Mimetic drift, random mutations. And this is how they're covering up the story. So the character spills the beans about how the big conspiracy works. And so the conspiracy covers it up like this. You started your story with a computer dump, and a lot of people read your printouts. A lot of people heard about what was on them, and still others only heard about hearing it. There's a lot of people today who have only heard vague rumors about a secret cabal controlling the course of history. Who? Why, the Jews, of course, or the Masons, or the Vatican, or the Rosicrucians, or the Trilateral Commission. You can fill in your favorite. The news today reported several synagogues in the Northwest and South vandalized by neo-Nazis and Klansmen. Phone calls to the TV station make it clear this was done to strike back at the cabal. So the protagonist leaks this information about the big conspiracy. Immediately after, there are stories about Nazis and Klansmen damaging synagogues to retaliate. So this is showing how, when the truth gets out, they cover it up with these very unsavory characters and conspiracy theories, exactly what Stu Peters is doing. Here we are, 1 degree separated from Stu Peters on these various subjects, and he's bringing it into this, where he's, showing himself walking around with a noose, essentially. Salty says, I'm getting wicked deja vu. Yeah, this is very interesting in itself, too. The fact that I find this random book, and it has multiple areas of overlap with my life, and specifically with my approach to this subject and the think tank. In fact, the character has something similar to our think tank. And some of the names have been uncannily close. And I have some ideas about why this would be. It has to do with my concept of, or this concept of the universe being intrinsically made of meaning, of information. And it seems like a book, for example, is a very information dense. I mean, besides just the words and the letters, it's informationally dense, and it contains all these ideas that perfectly resonate with what we're about. And in some way, there's some kind of attraction between the receiver of the information and the information itself. Like that old adage, when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And I think the information aligns, whether it's carried in someone's mind or in a book. But it arrives through the mechanism of synchronicity, because I'm listening to a podcast about Michael Flynn and his meme warfare, news bending, and all this. And then I'm at a thrift store and I see the name Michael Flynn on a book, and it's specifically about this. So I find these coincidences to be intriguing. But what we're seeing here is like an operation in progress with Stu Peters, and yeah, Copacetic says, like that Mad Mike article mentioning pre-bunkers. Yeah, why was it last month that there was an article in the New Yorker about Mad Mike? Well, they're addressing the cutting fringe and the ideas that we're bringing out. And that's why they have Joe Rogan questioning whether nukes are real, among other things. They're bringing a lot of this out there on purpose. And I think it's, again, to pre-bunk, to pre-saturate the field, and to discredit in advance. Far-right broadcaster Stu Peters plans his weekend of accountability. Again, I'm pretty sure they canceled it. I'll get to that. And I'm sure he's mad about it. The hotel where he was going to host it has somehow managed to cancel it. J Dig says the Amazon book is $30, $42 for the hardcover. The copy I have is from 1990, and the cover is crumbling. So it's kind of a rare book, is my point as well. It's not like it's popular. It's rare. It was a random find, and I only grabbed it because the author's name caught my eye, and it's 100% about newsbenders, the way we've been trying to describe them. Armin Ree says, it's not us that find the truth, but the truth that finds us when we allow ourselves to be found. The more opinionated we become, the less truth is able to come to us. Okay, check this out. This is it. In less than 24 hours, Caesars Atlantic City Hotel Casino canceled Stu Peters' How to Tie a Noose workshop after RWW Right Wing Watch reported on it. And Stu Peters is pretty mad.
Just one day after we announced the Extreme Accountability event, actually less than a full day, less than 24 hours later, these people at Right Wing Watch, these lizard things, these pedophile enablers at Right Wing Watch, who, by the way, they're madly in love with me. They have an obsession. They just drool. They salivate while they watch every move that I make as they stare at me and hang on every word that I say. These parasites at Right Wing Watch and the rest of the corporate media came out running hit pieces on me and you and our event, like this especially fake one from this fake raw story published by this fake journalist called Kathleen Culleton.
Okay, he's mad. He's a little mad because his Extreme Accountability event, advertised by Walking Around with a Noose, got canceled. He's carrying a noose and an AR-15. And he's going to teach people to organize locally and burn books and conduct cross-burning parties. Like, okay, why would Caesars Atlantic City Hotel want to host an event like that? Like, this guy has no insight, or he set up the event knowing it would be canceled, and then he could feign outrage, which is what it looks like. This looks like outrage marketing.
And in response, the cowards, who we now know are pedophile enablers.
Anyway, moving on. Definitely lame. This individual is there to sabotage anybody on the fringe. Anyone not trusting mainstream media, yeah, you're in the same box as that guy. Like, if you're in alt media, you're in Stu Peters' territory. One Step Too Far says, is this a restream? I was the one who called but tried to hang up. Yeah, if you want to call back, phones are open. The number is, let me turn the ringer on again. I absolutely hate the Skype ringer. I really do. And it used to be an option. You used to be able to shut it off. You know, that's really how they control things. They don't tell you what to think, but they do close off options. I still think it's insane that my Twitter account's ability to stream videos has been removed. Account after account after account. It was my first account. I'm streaming video, and then I see the next day, enable video is gone. So I cancel my blue check. I open up a new account. Purchase a blue check. My video button goes away, so I cancel the blue check. I go to a third one. So I went through 3 different Twitter accounts so that I can stream video, and they've all been disabled. Very strange. All right, anyway, if you want to try to call in, it's going to be hit or miss. Tomorrow, I'm pretty sure we'll have it working with Blog Talk Radio. Very strange. All right, moving on. Policy strategy attempts to direct estimate costs of space debris to satellite operators. How many satellites are in space? There are 8,261 orbiting the Earth. But it says here, there's direct damage from satellites from junk, and then there's the cost of maneuvering to avoid space debris. And this maneuvering burns fuel and shortens the mission's lifespan. Space junk has just been in the news quite a lot lately. And we're still awaiting that launch, the Boeing Starliner. And Boeing seems to be cursed right now. And it's 2 astronauts, both with the names starting with Will. So we got the twin Wills as we enter into Gemini, and they're launching a rocket with Boeing on it, which just sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. Joined by Dillian. Thank you for joining. Phones are open. Numbers on the screen if you want to call in. I was attempting to get back on with Blog Talk, but we're reverting to the old number just for the night. So again, phones are open, 505-349-0009. 0420. Let's scroll through my Twitter feed to see if anything interesting is going on. We're really just counting down the days now. You know, people count down till Christmas or whatever. Well, now we're counting down to 6/11 and the annihilation of Seattle. So just a heads up, if you're in Seattle and you want to do some live reporting, we're definitely looking for that. And if you're in the Dallas area, and you can go to Dealey Plaza on 529, the JFK worshippers will be there. And I'm certainly interested in getting some interview content from them. Angle of Elevation says, any thoughts on Terrence Howard? Personally, I think he's a planted ideologue hijacker. Yeah, I listened to his word salad, and that's what I felt like. I felt like it was very word salady and semantics, and I don't know how many of his ideas are actually valid. It was glib, sure, but it was almost like a chat GPT type conversation. I don't know if I learned anything from it. And so here we go. This is a clip where he's explaining the ether to Joe Rogan.
Remember the Michelson-Morley experiment from 1887? They were trying to prove whether there was an ether or an effect of an ether, or the quintessence that everything came from. That used to be called the fifth element, that everything in that from antiquity, everyone understood that something doesn't come out of nothing. It's like when you look at the air, it looks clear, but you change the pressure condition. The balance of the change of pressure condition, we call that condensation. It creates clouds. And you change the motion condition.
Infinite Plane Radio.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, caller?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Oh, awesome. Hi, Tim. Hi, Infinite Plane Society. I've never called in before, but I got your press pass, and a newsworthy event happened to me. It's been a while.
Sure. Thanks for calling. We always like first-time callers. What was your newsworthy event?
Okay, does anyone remember November 10th, 2023? I know.
Okay, 11/10/2023. I remember 11/11, but no, what was 11/10?
Okay, there was a alleged mall shooting at Independence Center, and I was an ear witness. I heard it. The alleged event happen.
Okay, I found it. I found it here. Okay, now was this the one at a Missouri shopping mall?
Yes. Yeah, Independence, Missouri.
Okay, here we go. 4 wounded, 3 suspects in custody. Okay, my first take on this really quick. If it doesn't have a high body count and nobody dies, I assume it's real because it's not an extraordinary claim. So I don't necessarily think this one would be my first guess wouldn't necessarily be hoax. But what did you hear? Because it could have been a drill regardless.
Yeah. So somebody did die, but they died. Well, once again, I mean, like, all due respect, this lady, young woman was pregnant and she was shot in the head. And 4 days later, they took her off life support in the hospital, is kind of what went down. And at least, and so it's so funny, being there in the community and like hearing different stories about this event. And also, if you recall, there was this event after the Super Bowl in downtown Kansas City, which did, and so this is an interesting compare and contrast. Like, why the mall shooting in Independence Center? Yeah, only one person died, but it didn't really achieve national coverage, right? Versus like the Super Bowl parade shooting, which
sure.
did achieve national coverage.
Oh, yeah, look, that's the tell. I generally say it's this: if it's an extraordinary claim, then we got to check it. If it's not that extraordinary, maybe not. But the hallmarks of it being a psyop means press conference, national coverage, and immediate implementable political solution, and that's you or a scapegoat. For example, they said when Joel Osteen's church was shot up, and unfortunately he wasn't there, but it was a psyop. My point of it being,
Ah.
they said, "Oh, they've got a manifesto. The shooter was this," and the right wing's like, "Oh, look, it's a trans shooter." Then we find out, no, it wasn't. So they have this big fight over it. Everybody hears about it, but it has some
Mhm.
agenda attached. And so it's something like this, especially if it's just some local story that doesn't go national. I don't immediately jump to it being fake. That sounds real to me. If there's no actors out in front immediately telling the story, that's another tell as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I was actually interviewed by the local news, and in some respects, I did kind of play the role of a crisis actor, and I didn't even get paid for it. I was interviewed 3 times by 2 different stations, and ultimately was reduced to a soundbite. But um, no, it is an interesting thing because, like, I wanted to say about this shooting. I don't want to talk about it too much, but like, I heard a lot of conflicting stories, like total opposite stories about the involvement, what caused it, and like, whether the woman who got shot, whether she was a totally innocent bystander or not, and all these questions of gang involvement and stuff. Like, I don't want to disparage anyone. I'm sure nobody wanted to get injured or shot if anything did happen. And there's questions of whether they've even apprehended the perpetrator or not. And there's a lot of, like, you know. But anyway, it's interesting that you hear these contradictory things, about even a likely real event, you
Sure. Well,
know.
look, on a real
And
event,
so, yeah.
there has to be an investigation. You have presumption of innocence, and you'll notice when it's a fake event, there's no presumption of innocence. They will tell you, this is the bad guy, here's his manifesto, and this is the right-wing influencer that inspired him. So they give you everything all at once with no presumption of innocence, no investigation. You get eyewitnesses on TV instead of perhaps protecting them in case the shooter needs to be convicted. So there's a major difference between the psyops that we observe and real news events. And I'm never confused, by the way. I've never been confused. I'm the least confused person that I know. I'm never like, well, I don't know if that one's fake. I'm pretty good about making my claims and claims that I stand by, and I've yet to be proven wrong when it comes to asserting something to be
Hmm.
fake. And it's generally the case here locally. I observe the news here. When there is a shooting, you don't get the whole sales pitch and agenda at all. It doesn't happen. And it's like, well, if this one was a psyop, they would be jumping all over it and marching for this guy, but nope, just another person killed at a gas station.
Yeah, the lack of, like, because it's so extraordinary to have this full written narrative. Like, they put books worth of information out about an event that happens like less than 24 hours ago. It is highly suspicious, to say the least.
Then add on to that the fact
And,
that
uh-huh.
Netflix will have a show on the night before that eerily mirrors the big tragic event that just happened. Like, that's also another factor here. The predictive programming reinforces the news narratives in a coincidental way.
Yeah, that is this weird overlap between fake and real. And there was another point I want to make, and this is about the Super Bowl parade alleged shooting that happened allegedly in downtown Kansas City the day after the Super Bowl or something like that. But so it's a point I want to make about these fake shootings, or any sort of, like, or even if it was real, whatever. Even if it was a real shooting, here's the story. So there's a lot of people who were, like, part of the panicked exit of the downtown area. So there's this swarms and swarms of cars leaving downtown Kansas City, and somebody gets in a car wreck. So this guy is telling me his story. He didn't witness the shooting, right? But he witnessed the car wreck that was caused by the panic exit from this shooting event area, whether it was real or not. And so, who's going to pay for the damaged car? You know,
Ooh, that's a good
that's what I
question.
wanted to say.
That's a very good question. Let's say they're running a psyop. It's a closed movie set, actors and everything, and they precipitate something real. someone ought to be able to sue them for starting a riot. There's a disruption there. Yeah, that is a great point you bring up.
Hmm.
And look, we had a reporter go to Yorba Linda. There was a BLM related protest, and so a reporter was there, and he started confronting people, and one of them maced him, hit him with the baton, broke his phone, and then she got in her car and she ran over some MAGAs. They were broken legs, like
Oh
they're
wow.
like so. To me, they have to maintain, I think, closed movie sets as best they can because they don't want these types of unpredictable things to happen. But yeah, they're playing with fire all the time. With regard to that Kansas City shooting, I thought it was interesting because the news media had compared Brock Purdy to Lee Harvey Oswald. And so we were already looking around for a shooter or a sniper situation, so that was kind of like expected on our end. But yeah, I thought that was pretty much
Hmm.
fakeable for sure.
Yeah, it is strange, you know, with all of the hype that comes around the Super Bowl, and like it's pretty common. Like they act like it's some secret ritual, but especially even among like the whatever we call Trutherville or whatever type conspiracy theorists, like they're well aware of these like occult ritualistic pageantry associated with the Super Bowl, especially the halftime shows. And so like any events happening after that are, to be judged with that grain of salt, with that kind of skepticism. And
Yes.
there's also this voting thing that happened regarding a building of some stadium in Kansas City. Um, I guess it was voted no to build a new stadium, but there are some questions of whether that was like how much you want to question the political system, especially on a grassroots level. Like, was that an organic vote? And even if it was an organic vote, was it influenced by the shooting event or any of these other questions? When it's politically driven, there's this extra layer of skepticism you could apply.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this reality's been rigged in ways that are just really beyond the scope of what most people are willing to entertain. And sports, I mean, look, yeah, you're right. For at least 10 years, truthers have been watching the Super Bowl for the mid-game halftime show satanic ritual for years. That's just been a tradition, and it's predictable. It shouldn't be, but it is. We're
Hmm.
like I call it the super mystery Babylon fertility rite bowl because you've got these obvious god goddess rituals, same symbols every single time. So I don't even trust the games or anything around it at this point. And when you look at the role of bread in circuses, you can see why the Super Bowl is hugely important. There's no way any of that is going to be outside of their complete and utter control.
Yeah, I mean it is. Um, yeah, like you say, the bread and circus. And that it's so funny how like the same people who will like be like, oh, that's a satanic ritual, oh, new world order, they're not going to go so far as to say, oh, the football game is rigged, like I mean that's, and like how controversial that is to say, like, and people just have this like goldfish memory about like world wrestling entertainment or almost any other, I mean, let alone the performance enhancing drugs, but the fact that players actually, take falls for money. Like some of the commenters, I think, say, like, most people have their price. Most people aren't so principle driven or such true sportsmen that they're like, I'm not going to use performance enhancing drugs. I'll never take a fall. I'm true to the game. How rare is that kind of person? They're out there, but especially on a world stage level, it's
Sure.
it's hard to imagine that they could slip in.
Well, when Damar Hamlin had his fake heart attack on the ground, and they did this big Masonic ritual. Everybody's kneeling except for the guy named Neil, who's number 33. We see these big events, and it's like, okay, this is implicating every single player. They're all actors. So there's a filter that nobody gets there unless they're somehow complicit in this. And it is kind of a hypocritical for someone to think, okay, obviously the Super Bowl is a bunch of satanic trash, but the game is Americana and it's pure. Like, give me a break. It's ball worship. It's all there to harvest energy for idol worship. The idea that it's harmless, but the middle of the game, the midterm, the halftime is just somehow been co-opted. Nope, it's all unified, and some people don't want to let it go. Ego, emotions, they're attached to it. Like, oh, our team won, like our country went to the moon. It's pride.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people, yeah, people like to have. I guess, and pride maybe is even a form of escapism, especially when it's not like, the a more, I don't know. I guess anyway, whether even if it's individual pride, if you get too prideful with yourself and you're not willing to be humble and realize that you are dupable, you know, like that's part of the trap there. It's a form of escapism and perfectionism, and it's even more so when it's like a community pride or I mean, yeah, some people they're like they can't handle the perpetual identity crisis, and so in order to you know fill that uncertainty rather than struggling with like self-actualization and truth seeking or something, they resort to like you know brand identity basically, and they can't then they're invested, then like you say they invest their social capital into it, and then so when someone is like this ultimate Chiefs fan with all the memorabilia and signed merch and they want their football cards to go up in value, and then you say, oh, the game's fake, you know you're undercutting this massive, not only it's not just an economic cult but a psychological cult for sure.
Yeah, it's like a psychological Ponzi scheme. I describe the QAnon as such because they invest their social media, their social capital, they put their hope and their emotions into it. But yeah, the pride thing is big, and you brought up the word dupable. And I have a chapter in Autohoaxology 101, Are You Dupable? Because you are. Human beings, we are dupable, especially when there are illusions that are designed to bypass your ability to see through it, like magic shows. Magic's one of the oldest arts, oldest forms of entertainment. We're talking about a sleight of hand. So the idea
Hmm.
that like where any of us are immune to it is absurd. We are all dupable. And if that's not your starting point, you're going to be locked in a self-reinforcing echo chamber. And I describe the mass media as a big echo chamber, closed system, and that's because it cannot admit that it's wrong. And when you challenge it, they accuse you of being the
Ah.
liar. And that's actually standard for lying manipulators, where they get accused of something, and what they do is they accuse the accuser of what they're doing, and it's off-putting. Here we are calling out media hoaxes, and they're like, "You hoaxers are so terrible." I'm like, "Wait, you're the terrible hoaxers." They reversed it.
Yeah, yeah, it is this, it's a knee-jerk defensive mechanism, because there's when you're going from a place of like experience and a reduced, set of like because having a higher standard of evidence reduces the evidence you can use, and that gives you this really firm foundation to like think from and argue from. And then when like I guess yeah, and I love the terminology, the edifice of lies. And so like when you're standing on this edifice of lies and someone's like, hey, your foundational premise is unexamined, and then they can't go examine their premise and get into the weeds, so they just have to be like, oh, well, you too, or something, this kind of reflexive, no, you're the liar, I'm not the liar, when it's
Yep.
not even, that's not even what the demand, that's not the point being addressed. It's a question of like foundation, where you're starting from.
Exactly. I said earlier that the informed disbeliever weighs more, has more credibility than the low information believer. And what we're doing is we're just saying you need to present evidence for your claims. And we're in the information age, it should be easy today to do so. And I don't think that most people who are standing on this establishment edifice of lies are prepared to defend it. They're simply not. Like, when I talked to Mick Toons about the space station, he said, you can just go out and look at it. And I asked him, have you seen it? And he said, no. I think I just kind of, noticed sort of a blind spot there where a lot of people have just accepted say, the visual equivalent of hearsay, and
Mm-hmm.
their worldview is blinkered by false explanations that have killed curiosity, so they ceased to seek answers. That's what false answers do, is they stop you from looking. And they're not ready for, I don't think, a tidal wave of seekers. That's what we're pretty much doing here by standing firm on our agnosticism.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, good points there. Um, yeah, the CSA is such a trap. I feel like that's what I was thinking. It's like there's this barrage of information because it's not just oh geez, what was that term? The active measure. Okay, because yeah, it's not just one fake landing. That wouldn't be enough if they just stopped and then didn't keep bringing more and more. It's not just one ISS mission. And so that's this constant validation. And because they're always coming out with new validation, that also cuts away the motive for the individual to go out and explore. Like he hasn't seen the ISS himself. Why not? Because there's 100 million videos of people claiming to see the ISS, and tomorrow there's going to be another 1,000 posted. So you're not just battling it. It's like you have to find this internal motive to become your own arbiter, because it's handed to people on a silver platter. That's, I guess, the double-edged sword of this information age. This access to huge amounts of technology and generative capacity is that you can easily, like, stick your head right through the screen, and then the screen is seeing for you, and then your reality is augmented.
Yeah, there's so much information that it's overwhelming. There's actually not enough time in the day. If this isn't your full-time preoccupation, there's not enough time in the day to go through all of it and discredit it. So most people just accept it all passively. They accept all the news they didn't watch, they assume it happened, and so I see them as just adrift in the sea of irrelevance. And I think the only way to counter it is to raise your standard to skepticism, only accept that which is supported by evidence, and by stepping out of the compulsive believe everything, you're categorically debunking entire claims, like mass shootings, categorically debunked if they don't have evidence. And so it's kind of a time saver. Skepticism saves you time because you're not believing it until you get evidence. You're not just believing stuff and then later having to backtrack.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, definitely evidence. Yeah, no, that's fun. I guess I'll bring it back. I don't want to go on for too long. Um, so yeah, the best evidence I have, and look, I love the mall. I love the crap out of the mall. I love the Independence Center Mall. It's an architectural marvel. There's no reason to be afraid of it. I'm still not afraid of mall shootings. Like, and like, I'm a Missourian. We love our guns. We don't need a permit to carry a gun here. And I own a lot of guns. I shoot a lot of guns. I shoot recreationally and competitively. And like, I don't feel like I need to have a gun in the mall. I'm not that insecure. And so, like, the mall is beautiful. It's great. It's on the way up. Um, but yeah, they still haven't fixed the front door that got shot through. There used to be two layers of doors. Now there's just one and one partial layer of door. So there's some empirical evidence as well. Once again, it's fakeable, but that's what I got for you.
Yeah, I'm on that one. I would rule real, but that one more point here, really quick. There's a good study on NPR if you haven't seen it called "The School Shootings That Weren't," where they checked out 230 some reported shootings in the 2015-2016 school year, and having gone through all of them, they found that only 11 were actual incidents. The rest were misreported. And out of these 11, none of them were actual shootings. But nobody went through and challenged these 230 stories. And if NPR didn't do it, that would have just been statistics that would influence how people see things. So it's like there's no internal checks and balances
Hmm.
whatsoever. So if you don't have your own, yeah, you're just going to be eminently programmable. And if you're programmable, yeah, you'll have a phobia about going to the mall, a phobia about schools now, sending your kids to schools. I mean, there's so many things to be afraid of if you're trusting, just trusting blindly the screen as a source. Anyway, I appreciate your call, and definitely call back anytime. And you said you
Right
had,
on.
yeah,
Yeah.
first time caller. Appreciate that as well. Always good to have first time callers. Excellent points you raised here.
Awesome. Yeah, totally, man. I'll be calling back again some more. I have some other cool topics I didn't even get to get into, but it's been a pleasure, and it's always fun hanging out with all of y'all. I love your work, and I wish I could donate more. I know no rush. I know I've bought some stuff on Ko-fi. I don't know if it just gets lost in the mail or you haven't shipped it yet. It's really no rush. I just want to donate, and anyway. Right on.
Cool.
Support the IPS. I support all y'all. I love y'all, and I will be talking to you later.
All right. Well, thanks for the participation and comments. Appreciate it. And yeah, just hit me up on Ko-fi. I'll get you a tracking number, or I'll check on the order. Thanks again. Have a great evening. All right, everyone. First time caller this evening, and yeah, definitely appreciate all the comments. This is a think tank made up of ideas, observations, and viewpoints. And donations always appreciated. It's what keeps us going. We've been dealing with suppression, attempts at disruption and censorship for a long time, but we're on a very firm ground here when it comes to our position. We're not just conspiracy theorists. We're not alt media regurgitating mainstream media and then throwing it back and with some spin. We're doing something entirely different, and it shouldn't be censored anyway. If anything, it's more philosophical and academic than political speech. But regardless, what we're doing is, I think it's worth doing. One, it's valid. Two, and it's not going to be stoppable because we're correct. We are right. In other words, you're being unreasonable if you just take your worldview straight from a pathological liar and you never examine any of its claims. Skepticism is reasonable, especially today, given how much competition there is for every second of your attention, and all of it for the purposes of exploitation, getting your money, getting your vote, whatever it happens to be. If you're not skeptical today, you're pretty much lost in a subjective reality. I would say that if you're not auto hoaxing, you're just not paying attention. Okay, let's see here, going through your comments. Good call, says Jay Diggs. Yep. We always have great callers. Our chat room is always lit. Some of the best minds on the internet. And this is it's a philosophical position that we take that I think is separating us from. Here we go. Infinite Plane Radio. What's up,
Hey,
caller?
Tim.
Hey.
It's Yurt Mama.
Oh, your mama.
Can
Thank
you
you
hear
for.
me?
Yeah. Thank you for calling.
First time caller, long time listener.
Oh
Thanks
yeah.
for having me.
Always see you in the chat. I noticed this is your first time calling. So what is on your mind this evening?
Just I feel like it's just all a huge ritual. The elections, the sports. It's just a diversion. But I was thinking, are they using certain principles against us? Like, I think they use some type of grimoire and cast spells. It sounds crazy, but like, have you ever heard of Hans Utter?
I
He's
don't
a doctor in music.
know. What
He
was the
explains like mind control and how these rituals, like the Super Bowl, are messing with us temporally, and they'll do it over, decades. Like, so we have the CIA and the Grateful Dead, and like even psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin is all linked to the Department of Defense and the CIA, and they're sort of casting spells on us. It's really dark.
I would concur. I mean, one of the things that we have done here is, we're examining how they fake the news. Like we're examining propaganda and manipulation psychologically, but we can't separate it from all of the strange occultism. It's there. And I've recently put out an article called News Spellcast, where media and magic intersect. And if you look at the theory behind magic, Aleister Crowley or any of these New Age magical philosophies, you'll find that they're all predicated on the belief that human attention, when focused, has some kind of energetic exchange with the environment, and that events that follow can be in some way influenced, that we are somehow co creators. But if this is true, I've been saying, then this is not known to the average person, but it's known by the people who program us. So then my question is, have we been turned into matrix batteries? And for the last year, I've been
Mhm.
doing a deep dive on this, and it turns out in group magical rituals, the participants don't have to know the meaning of the symbols in order to power it. So I would say the answer is
To
yes.
initiate. Mhm.
Yeah, I would say
Yeah,
that yes,
definitely.
that there's no opt out.
Well, if you're not aware, we're at the mercy of the planets and these things are alive in their principles. Like Luciferianism is not Lucifer is not a demon. Lucifer is a principle, and I would say it's probably Venus. And these
Yes.
planets have different aspects. So I mean, it's very complicated and complex, and it takes a long time to figure it out. I don't fully understand it. But yeah, they're using these principles against us, and because we don't understand it, we're kind of like that's the mind control. But like when we wake up, I don't know, at some point it's like they quit fucking with you or they quit fucking with me. Like I felt like I don't know.
Sure. No, look,
It's some kind of agency.
yeah, one of the
Like
points that I find consistently made, and in my article I cited Peter Carroll, who writes about what he calls chaos magic. The idea is that in order to tap into this, you have to bypass your ego, your conscious awareness of it. So the spells, the rituals are meant to smuggle ideas past your awareness to where they can have an effect. So the magician has to be able to trick themselves, in other words. So magic and trickery go hand in hand, whether it's stage magic or ritual magic. You're tricking the eyes or you're tricking the mind. And in the case of
mhm,
mass media, if you're not aware of it, then it's all going to work on you. But when you're cognizant that you're being
mhm.
manipulated, it can't work. Your psychic sensor is activated. So I would say that awareness of media trickery inoculates you against psychological, emotional manipulation, but also the spiritual manipulation. I think you can unplug, and awareness would be the key.
Sure. I mean, especially if you tap into higher consciousness. I swear I think it has something to do with the North Star, its consistency, and then I'm not sure that I'm thinking it's some kind of holographic projection, like it's objective, like it's an experience and we do co-create. I'm not, have you heard of the Sat Yoga, SAT
Uh,
yoga? He explains, I don't know the guru's name. And I was like, is this guy a cult leader or not? Because he's very convincing. Um,
well,
basically, go
no,
ahead.
no, go on, go on. I haven't heard of this, but go on. I'm interested.
I mean, it's just, it's a theory. I meditate a lot. I kind of like focused on the North Star and I found a peace there. I don't know if it's just me and, but I felt like I went within and just found a truth and
Fascinating. Well, the dog star has been called the star of initiation, and it's central in all these various temples, even in Freemasonry. And the idea, according to many writers on the subject, Robert Temple, Robert Anton Wilson, is that this is some kind of, it's whatever it is, it's sending information that's meant to cause people to awaken to higher consciousness. So the idea is that the stars, the planets, the luminaries aren't just objects floating in space, but there's some kind of conduits for.
they're
Um,
con- yeah, they're consciousness.
and so you mentioned planets, and somebody said, "What does she mean by planets?" Well, if you look at every one of these magical systems, their basic gods are ascribed to these planets in our solar system, but they're all the idea here is that these things are all representative of these gods, and they're I guess you would say personified, but for example, the days of the week, Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. So it's all tied into this, and all of their magical rituals operate on the premise that you're somehow drawing down energies from above from the so-called planets. Like all ritual magic is planet magic. They're worshiping the planets, the moving
Right. It's
stars.
astrotheology. And something about Saturn crystallizing it, I don't understand it all. It's very complex. Like you said, it's, thinking of the word. It's like a divine clock of some sort. I mean, it's wondrous and mysterious, and they cloak it in like materialism, and in this ritual, where I think we could tap into if we go within and get past the ego, we could co-create.
Yeah, I think so. I think in some way, I mean, my concept of the universe is not that it's this corpse dead and we're just apes with big egos, but I think it's created as we experience it, and that we are
Yeah.
in some way like a reflection of, the idea of as above, so below, which is what all these various mystery schools say, is that we are essentially integrated into it, and there's like a feedback loop there, and I think that's the thing that they disconnect you from, the feedback loop, synchronicity.
It's like they're divorcing us from God, I think. I mean, good orderly direction or generation operation death, if that makes like a divine algorithm of some sort.
Oh, sure.
We're kind of at the mercy of the broadcasters, and then we're at the mercy of the planets and the zodiac and you know what I mean? It's like, so if you're not aware and you're not really trying, if you're not really looking and you're not seeking truth, like I cannot sit down and watch TV. I just cannot do it.
Oh, the TV is a black box. I think it's a symbol of this realm.
Yeah.
The black box cube is a symbol of matter, and its soul is the container for the soul, the spirit, the realm that we're going through. You could say prison, labyrinth, whatever it is. The cube has always been the symbol. And I think it's interesting if you look at the Devil Tarot card, he's sitting on a black cube, and then the man and the woman are chained to it. It kind of looks like an iPhone,
Mhm.
but he represents the material realm, our bestial nature. And the idea is that if you're always plugged into it only at this level, you're basically living as an NPC, as a beast,
Yeah.
as a meat suit and nothing
It's
more, and it disconnects you from.
organic portal,
Yeah, precisely.
like a clay person. But I think Rudolf Steiner explained like Lucifer these are complex, abstract concepts that we can't understand unless, as humans, unless we kind of anthropomorphize them, if we, so these principles of balance, and I don't know, I wish I knew more. I wish I knew where to read more. I like Wakey Wakey. Have you ever heard of him?
Oh yeah, yeah, I have actually, and
Yeah.
it's been a while, but I have read Rudolf Steiner and Carl Jung, and one of the things I think is consistent with them is that we have to communicate, or the way you communicate with your subconscious, and the reason why they do rituals is that you have to take these very complex abstractions and personify them. So, like these various planetary deities are just forces of nature personified. Most of these
Mhm.
various concepts describe reality with four principal elements, and then you include spirit being the fifth. So they're always, in other words, trying to communicate to the subconscious. And then I look at the movies and I look at the programming and the archetypes, and I'm like, look, they're talking to our subconscious mind because they know how to do it. They know its language.
Mhm. Yeah.
But excellent call, excellent points. I agree with you.
Thank you for having
Everything.
me.
I think it's all definitely. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that it's all connected to some mega ritual plugging us all into this system, whatever it happens to be.
Well, I think God's bigger than the mind control, than the war on consciousness. And that's my message. I'm glad you had me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for calling, and appreciate all of your comments and participation. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye, Tim.
All right, everyone. That's your mama. Another first-time caller. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, buddy.
Oh, hey, what's up? Tim Osman.
Yeah, it's me, man.
Hey, did you hear about the final experiment?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's a good thing to talk about. What do you think about that?
Well, apparently my name has been put on the list. Nick Fingar has put my name in the hat for the final experiment. I think it's a good idea. It's the only sensible thing I've heard from that group for a long time. It's been years since they've said anything close. Since I was involved in trying to get somebody to go deep south. It's about time.
Yeah, you can go find the penguins, go hang out with them. But I'm to the belief that flat earthers will not accept that as evidence. And especially like mainstream flat earthers, if you went, many of them wouldn't trust it. But I don't think people understand the implications of the 24-hour sun. Not only that, but like the celestial sphere and how and basically everything, how sun rising and setting and moon and all these different things that are very, very obvious, eclipses and stuff, like, oh, the moon is a telegram or whatever.
A telegram.
um
Okay. Well,
yeah, a telegram.
well, look, you're right.
But
You're right to mock it, but I think the mockery can go both ways when it comes to evidence that's presented. I'm still hyper focused on bad special effects and CGI. I'm entirely open to the possibility of a ball Earth, but I still don't believe the version they showed us. I'm still thinking, what are they hiding? There's too much trickery for me to trust it 100%.
yeah, so if you don't believe like the NASA imagery, which we have, probably millions of images at this point, or Japanese JAXA or any of that, then I think the next reasonable kind of go to would be a sphere Earth, geocentric or heliocentric, because everything else works. I feel like flat Earth and the YouTube phenomenon of 2014, late 2014, with Eric Dubay and Mark Sargent and all these people, um, they've had 10 years, and we're not even back to square one. We're before. I went and talked to Nathan Oakley the other day, and he just muted me and yelled at me like I knew he would. I was just giving him some content, but
Yeah, he's stuck.
he,
He's stuck in 2015. I've seen that. It's
oh
kind of
man,
sad. Look, you've had enough time. There's been a lot of time, and I'm kind of disappointed in the lack of progress. But I feel the same for the space agencies. China now has a space station, and it looks like the type of space station you would get if you ordered it from Wish. The special effects are not improved at all, in my opinion.
yeah. But importantly, back to what you said first, the Antarctic trip. Um, like I said, there's a lot of obvious things like eclipses, solar and lunar, that are completely disregarded, and flat Earth is kind of the belief that wants to be upheld with people's axioms for some reason, the conspiratorial bias or something. So I don't think that would help, even though Witsit and some of these other people have said, Dave Flat Earth, David Weiss, he said that if there was a 24-hour sun, then it would debunk flat Earth. But even if we did get a Jeranism or somebody to go, which he's already poo-pooing it and like, oh, this is bullshit. Um, I just think that there would be another excuse, because there's always an excuse for everything. Everything else has to have an excuse.
I won't
And I've heard
accept it.
all of them.
We can't accept, look, at this point, we can't accept excuses. Not from the proponents, not from people making money off of it. The fact of it is, it's almost like a default judgment. If no flat earther goes to see the 24-hour sun, globe wins by default. There, that you can't make a good faith argument. And I feel like if you're asking questions in bad faith, you're making bad faith arguments. You need to be called to task. So this is it. This is the final experiment, and that's why if these shills decide to not go in because it might cut into their app sales, I will definitely do it. I will make the observation myself. I'll stay up for 24 hours and I'll just stand there on camera, time lapse. And yeah, they might not trust me. I
Would
guess.
that prove it to you though? That would
Well,
that prove it?
well, 100%, absolutely would prove it to me.
Wow.
I mean, what else? What else would you? How else could you explain it? But then I would still have to, obviously, um, figure out the borderline between real and fake when it comes to the space program, which is kind of a separate
Yeah.
thing from this particular aspect. But um, yeah, I'm saying, why is it
Definitely.
taking so long? Why hasn't there been a consolidated effort to go deep south? Well, because it's been sabotaged by conference earthers. Because back, if you remember 2017, 2018, 2019, the IPS was full steam behind the project to go to Antarctica, and nobody wanted to support it for some reason.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you were thinking about that. Was that for 24 Hour Sun though? At the time?
At the time, it was just to go deep south and see what happens, and that would have just led to something, I'm sure. And we couldn't get any kind of momentum behind it, and it seemed like they were more interested in courting celebrities to join their cause. So the flat Earth movement really became stagnant, and so anybody who's stuck on that as a single issue is way behind the times because we're far past talking about the hypothetical shape of the world.
Yeah. Well, I wonder how many of your followers or people in the chat, um, if this happens, when this happens, if that would sway them. Because there's always, I mean, there are 24-hour um, videos uncut, but one of them, the sun goes behind the clouds, so that makes that shady. And then the other one, they basically loop it at the end, but it is 24 hours. But those are not good enough already. And that guy had a watch like right by the camera and like everything. It rotated with the sun, everything. So
Well, look, what we can't do
the
is we can't.
it's such a like John LeBon, he called it a long time ago. It's like it is a cottage industry. Um, these people are looking to cash out on it. I heard Jaronism the other night. He's like, "Man, I hope I'm not doing this in 10 years. I know I'm not going to be doing this in 10 years." And he's sitting there talking to how many ever people that are listening to the Jaronism Flat Earth show, and he's like telling me, he didn't want to do it basically. And then you have Witsit, he's not making enough money through Flat Earth, so you have like Jaronism talking to people about donating to him and all this kind of stuff. So it's just this. It is a cottage industry for most. I mean, Mark Sargent goes and does those commercials, or he did that commercial in Australia at
It
least,
was. It kind of
and
died off. It was a cottage industry. Money did motivate a lot of
definitely has
people.
died out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it has died when the money dried out, and that was one of the things that I
yeah,
think was driving a lot of people into it was conspiracy theory in general is a cottage industry, but this became the hot topic and buzzword, and it drew all the attention. Q kind of, I think, s split that up, but no, it's nowhere near what it was. I don't even know if Mark Sar is he retired? Is he still flat earthing? Like there aren't any.
dude, he's still doing. He's still doing shows with Karen B, dude. Literally, the Stranger Than Fiction or whatever show. He's on like thousands of shows now.
Well, see, he was never even up to speed on auto hoaxing. In fact, the concept was beyond him, and this is far more advanced than this knee-jerk critique of NASA. Like we know NASA is full of fakery, like everything else, but it's much bigger than this controlled opposition debate. And the problem I've had from the beginning is, of course, nobody's interested in going to the edge. And then we get Mad Mike on our side, who has a viable, I guess, path to space, and still we had nothing but resistance in that. So it just seems like yeah, good riddance to a lot of these channels. Let them fall into obscurity. If they're not willing to go deep south and walk the talk, then yeah, they're just for the most part grifting.
Yeah, they're all kind of. It seems like they're all trying. I mean, thankfully the Globe Earth Tards are like McToon and FTFE and all this stuff. They're kind of putting pressure on them. Like, here you go. There's one flat Earth free ticket to your promised land. Go figure it out. And so it seems like they're all going to decline in their own way by calling it various sorts of illegitimate or whatever,
See, I would
which is
look.
great,
This
dude.
is what I haven't. Flat Earth group in general, they seem to lack imagination. Like Jaron should say, like the fact that he's not interested in this speaks volume about his lack of information or ability to market things, because just sending a flat earther to the South Pole would get worldwide attention on the idea and invigorate the
Yeah,
conversation.
sure.
And if there's more to it, more people talk. And so they're not even willing to do this. And I'm like, we should be going south just to stir the pot, because I'm still at the point where I think that we need a lot more information to even start talking about a model. And even Witsit gets it, is trying to conceive of an alternate model, alternate physics. And it's like, it's
Yeah,
premature for that. We need to do this first. So anyway, I'm putting myself on the list. I will go to
nice.
the South Pole. I will bring others with me. I mean, we'll make it an IPS thing, but I'll definitely do it. You won't see me backing out of a challenge like that. But as far as it being a
You said it
great
was like only 31,000 all inclusive. It sounded like,
31,000 all
which isn't
inclusive.
that bad. Yeah.
We could crowdfund it, but I will get behind it. I will reach out and make it happen. But one question I want to ask you really quick, because I'm getting into the point where I want to start debating people. Chemtrails. Do you think that I'll run into the same issue here, where big channels will not be able to backtrack on their previous belief in chemtrails? Do you think they'll stick to it forever?
uh, yeah. Like Richie from Boston. You'd think people like Fauci Jr. there would, um, yeah, they have to, man. I mean, for the most part, like we've seen smaller channels turn back from Flat Earth, like Ray and T Flat Earth, and I was thinking about Jamie Brown the other day. I always said if Jamie Brown can do it, so can you. But so many people, but they weren't like huge flat earthers that kind of made it 100,000 plus or like making money basically. So yeah, there definitely is incentive to continue the narrative. And I think that's why I feel like Jaren, he's just going through the motions nowadays. Just kind of like, oh, look, NASA's fake and NASA's fake. Look, oh. And,
Well, this
but
is
I think in general, like conspiracy, the crowd doesn't, you don't have many heavy hitters as far as people that want to donate. Either they're like anon like me, or at least try to stay, or they're just probably in their mother's basement for the most part. They just don't have that much fungible money.
Yeah, the topic lacks a lot of energy, and I think a lot of it's
Hmm.
stagnation that I think we can do something about. My intention was to get more into debating and trying to draw attention
Hmm.
to these things, but a trip to Antarctica,
You know what? You just brought something up that I was wanting to say.
uh-huh.
I think that what you were saying about Antarctica as far as stirring the pot, I think that would be bigger than any of the Netflix movies that they did. Uh, Logan Paul going to the thing, the late night show guy going there and trolling him. Like, I think it would get quite a bit of national coverage because it would end up being that there's a 24-hour sun, and it would be a good story, like, oh, flat earther went and found 24-hour sun. So
Yeah, and look,
uh
I would definitely make a good faith observation about a 24-hour sun. And some will say, like Copacetic suggested, maybe it's a second sun from another plane, which would mean we have to go further south. But whatever the case, um, I think that it would get a lot of attention. It would draw out anybody in the topic and bring closure to it. And that's what needs to happen. Uh, you mentioned Jaron. Look, in my opinion, I don't know if this is a popular opinion or not, but I think he's paid by NASA. I do think he's a shill for NASA. I literally believe that.
I think Witsit's a shill for the globe, dude. If you watch his channel, he's sitting there teaching you like the globe, but then if he editorializes, so if you just take like, well, and that's how we know the earth is flat, basically those little sentences after, like you could cut his videos and it could be a seminar, like a at a school or something, dude. Seriously. He goes through all these books and all these papers and stuff on his channel, and if you it's incredible. But Nathan Oakley the other day, like he's boiled down the argument so much that he doesn't do the observations anymore. Like they had St. Bees at first. They had different ones that they would bring up, the black swan. Now he just says that the Earth is measured flat, therefore it's flat. I mean, it literally, we went for, I think I talked to him for like 3 hours, dude. It was mind numbing. And he goes through these like, it's like a theatrical performance with me, dude. Like his different voices, and he's always talking about dipping his balls in my mouth and just.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, dude.
I have to catch up. I have to catch up with him. It seems like, yeah. Okay.
Oh man.
It's easier. I mean, look, there's that expression. It's easier to fool a man than convince him he's been fooled. You can fool
Yeah.
yourself into a false model, even if you think it's flat. There are fake, or rather, there are false flat models, and it's premature to even assert that it's a shape, a model. I'm going with the shape agnosticism, but I think it's premature. And so he's fighting to defend something that is intrinsically indefensible. And again, if he's not willing to at least help fund the trip to Antarctica, then he's another one of these individuals that I think is just kind of in the way of progress. So I'm going to make an effort to get into the final project here. I'll get my name on the list, and hopefully
Yeah.
hopefully they take it seriously, because I think a lot of these other guys are going to try to cop out, and they'll make up excuses like, we'll get shot by UN troops or whatever they say.
And if you back to your debate that you were bringing up, I think that's a good idea. I would like to see you out in the field, and also like this is kind of how obviously life works, about like connections, but it's also YouTube as well. Like if you set up a debate on modern day debates, or one of these channels that has 100,000 subs, you might you catch a few stragglers every single time. But multifaceted, like you could do a lot of different things.
That
I mean,
that
Mandela.
that's the next step. We have a list of things, and that is the next step. The Mandela effect needs to be debated. And so yeah, I'm actually putting out challenges right now. I'm trying to find someone willing to debate me on chemtrails, someone willing to
I
debate me
liked
on.
your Reds rhetoric debate, dude. Like one of those where you're just bringing your wits and not necessarily like an objectively true argument or like fashion about doing things, way about doing things, but that was just entertaining, dude. Because they were gonna get triggered with you, like really quickly, man. And like even FTFE, man. Would they, if you can calm down and not say certain things? I
Yeah,
think you
yeah.
triggered
I
Reds
made
with one of them.
I made Fight the Flat Earth cry, real tears,
Ah,
but I won't make him cry next time.
was
But
that the Challenger? Was that the Challenger one?
yeah, I brought up the Challenger, and I think he shed 7 tears, one for each fake dead astronaut.
Hey, have you ever been on McToon, man?
Yeah, McToon was the one who told me that I was lazy. I should just go outside and film the ISS. And I'm like, have you seen it? And he's like, no. But I'll read.
Jaren's done a transit on the sun and the moon
That's why
conveniently.
that's why I say he's a NASA shill. I think that Jaren is a double agent, and I think he's working for NASA. And they supplied him with the little Photoshop ISS to put into his video, and I stand by that.
Dude, there was one time I mean, another kind of self-debunking thing where he's like, oh, the star shows don't work on the globe. Then he set up like this globe in a room on some strings or something and had some laser lights, and he did it wrong, and someone told him to do it right, and he's like, okay, yeah, I guess they do work on a globe, but it's still not a globe. So like I mean, and then their old Globebusters channel plays their old videos. I've seen some of those like a while back, and they're literally replaying 2015 memes that we've all gotten past at this point.
God, that's
So
weird. Like it's like the
yeah,
2015 memes coming back, and then Q from 2017 rather, is coming back. There's a lot of recycling going on in Trutherville, and that's another reason why I feel like this is going to be the summer of debates. The IPS cyber symposiums are going to go issue after issue to really settle a lot of these things. And I want people to debate me and put skin in the game, because yeah, I'm done running in circles. 10 years. I mean, look, how long is this going to go on before people reach conclusions? And so that's kind of, and I feel like the IPS out of all the different groups has progressed in our general
Yeah.
understanding of media. We're not spinning our wheels here or wasting our time, and a lot of people are, and I kind of want to challenge that.
It was a more, in my opinion, disenfranchised, complete auto hoaxer back in the day. Like it was like everything's fake, nothing's real. But I think there's more of an objective standard that you tried to implement with that kind of some annotations, to it. So to the axioms, basically.
Yes, yeah. Well, we're making our best attempt to do this honestly, and I will arrive at truths that, even if I don't believe the truths or believe what the consensus says, if the consensus is vindicated or validated by facts, I'm not going to ignore that. I'm not here to foist delusions on people. I'm here to really, I think, foment a culture of informed disbelief and skepticism, which who wouldn't want that in this day and age? Well, the powers that be don't want people to think like this, but that is my approach.
So with Stavely and JLB, did you only get to listen to the 1 hour? Are you a member there?
I'm not a member, so I didn't
Or
get hour two, and they
yeah.
saved all the Mandela effect for hour two, sadly.
Which really, he's just going to be a broken record, dude. And then John LeBon, he's going to walk on eggshells for no reason. Like, so people say, oh, he was a great researcher in the past, and he was like one of the first and stuff. And I'm like, he's still saying like loose change 2004, 2005 stuff, dude. And I'm pretty sure he's down with the no planes and just some really idiotic shit, in my opinion, at least. But so they say that, but I've never found him. Mostly with the Mandela thing. Like, who's gonna sit there and have all these live shows with like 100 people and like complete bumfuck hillbillies out of they're on his show talking. One of them got arrested or whatever, needed some money not too long ago. But like that's pathetic, dude. Like, I remember back in the day when Shaquille O'Neal was like, or, he was Alakazam or whatever. It's like, fuck you, dude.
Well, look,
You have misremembrances, man.
I understand where they're coming from. I mean, the idea of alternate realities, reality shifting, this is all the stuff that used to be in the purview of paranormal. My issue with the
Mm.
Mandela is that it masquerades as legitimate paranormal, legitimate spiritual phenomenon. It's masquerading as something miraculous, and it's easily demonstrated to be a way that you screw with somebody's mind. And so that's why I'm trying to
But it's also it's what they attach to it too, like the residue and like different timelines and different things. So you take this false premise, right? And then you start building outwards like a tree of just absolute bullshit of what it could be, and then you kind of pretend that it is true. So like it would be interesting to be like, hey, do you remember like Berenstein or Bernstein? Like, oh yeah, I thought it was that. Like, oh cool, yeah. But then you build this whole alternate trans reality, I call it, because they're trans fluids, basically reality fluid, as you say.
yeah, the
So
trans-dimensional movement, and they are definitely a splinter, and I'm all for uh, discourse and discussion and debate and this type of questioning and stuff, but I do think in this case
yeah.
this is one that's it's illegitimate, and like Scientology, there are some things you just got to let it go, put it in the dustbin of history. You can rule it out. You tried it out, you explored it, and it got debunked. And I'm gonna
But even like once a month, you're doing a compilation or like, oh, look at this one, or whatever. Then you have a show about it, like clear and concise. Because I'm kind of a solutions, like a fixer in real life. Like I have solutions for things, and I'm thinking like, okay, let's just sit around and talk about the Earth's shape, or let's just sit around and talk about misremembrances, basically. And I'm like, none of these people in the conspiracy crowd have like not even a plan 3 steps ahead, but they don't even plan like 1 step ahead. What is the point of these conversations or continuing to talk about this stuff for years and years and years on end? Like, where has it gotten you? Where is it going to get you? And like, what do you foresee you can do about it? You know?
Right. Those are actually valid questions here. They really are. And I think that's kind of what we're pushing back against here. Like, um, jokingly, maybe not. I talk about chemtrails, and it's like, let's say these aren't real, and you spent 10 or 15 years warning people about it. Well, if the placebo effect is real and the nocebo effect is real, and psychosomatics happen, then all you did is you lowered vibes, spread fear, and possibly gave somebody psychosomatic chemtrail lung. Like, what's the upside to any of that?
Yeah, there isn't. It is a fear-based kind of a amygdala shaken kind of thing, and I think that's what conspiracy in general and like conservative Alex Jones style, like buy your My Patriot supply 77-year supply or whatever right now because we're about to get nuked kind of thing. So people are, and then even on the other side, like you have the abortion people who are like, oh my God, women's health care or, Palestine or whatever, where everyone's like on edge. And it's totally on purpose,
Choose your own
obviously.
apocalypse. Exactly. It's choose your own apocalypse.
Yeah,
Well, hey, appreciate
yeah,
the
one of
call very
those.
much.
Yeah, dude.
We're gonna do some debates, and so I look forward to seeing you there, hopefully in the chats and participating. I'm glad that you're here. You're doing what I'm doing. We're holding people accountable to their ideas and propositions, and so we may not agree on everything, but I think we're both approaching this with truth in mind, which is far different from what most of Trutherville is about these days.
Yes, indeed. Good talking to you, brother. And catch you soon.
All right, have a great night. All right, everyone. That's it's like Superman and Bizarro. That would be Tim Osman with an S, and he leans glurf. Yes, I have a glurf friend, so you can't say I'm prejudiced. This is Auto Hoax or GTFO. We will continue this conversation tomorrow for Infinite Plane Saturday, and subscribe below for a link to the newsletter, live stream notifications, and archives.